The Comanche warrior came begging for milk in the dead of night, his dying infant clutched against war paint streaked by rain. Mercy Caldwell opened her cabin door to thunder and desperation, her own newborn crying behind her in the darkness. "Please," the warrior gasped in perfect English that stopped her cold. "My son needs milk." She took the baby without thinking. The child's breath came shallow and weak against her chest. Her hands moved by instinct, cradling both infants as she settled into her rocking chair. The warrior's baby latched desperately, and she felt the pull of life demanding life. The man collapsed against her doorframe. Blood seeped through his buckskin shirt where a cavalry saber had found its mark. His breathing came ragged and uneven. "They're coming at dawn," he whispered. "The soldiers think I killed settlers." Mercy's blood turned to ice water. Her brother-in-law, Colonel Jeremiah Stone, led the territorial patrol. She knew his methods, she knew his hatred. The warrior's eyes found hers in the lamplight. They held no threat, only the hollow grief of a man who had lost everything twice over. His son's breathing steadied as warm milk filled his belly. "Did you?" she asked. "No." The word carried the weight of absolute truth. Mercy had heard enough lies from enough men to recognize honesty when it stared back at her. This warrior spoke English like a schooled man. His hands, though calloused from war, held his child with infinite gentleness. Outside, thunder rolled. Across the Texas plains, dawn would bring Stone and his soldiers. They would find this man and string him up without trial or question. The baby in her arms would die with his father. "Marry me," she said suddenly. The warrior's eyes widened. "What?" "Right now, tonight. As my husband, you'd have legal protection under territorial law." He stared at her as if she had lost her mind. Perhaps she had. Her own husband lay 6 months in the ground, taken by fever that burned through him in 3 days. The debts he left behind would claim her ranch by winter. She faced ruin either way. "You don't know me," he said. "I know you came here for your child, not to harm mine. I know Stone will kill you at sunrise." The warrior struggled to his feet. Blood spotted the floor beneath him. "I am Dakota of the Southern Bands. They call me Iron Wolf. I have killed soldiers. I'm Mercy Caldwell. I've buried a husband and nearly lost a son to this land's cruelty. We've both done what we had to do." Thunder crashed again, closer now. Time leaked away like water through cupped hands. Dakota looked down at his son, alive and feeding in her arms. "Why would you risk this?" Mercy met his gaze without flinching. "Because I've seen what Stone does to prisoners. Because your boy deserves better than dying for his father's skin." A knock rattled her door. Old Samuel Wright's voice carried through the wood, thin with urgency. "Mercy, child, I saw the light. Storm's got my roof leaking something fierce." She stood carefully, both babies still in her arms. Samuel Wright had been the territorial minister for 30 years. He had married her to Thomas, buried Thomas in the ground, and baptized her son 3 weeks past. "Samuel," she called. "I need you to perform a marriage ceremony." Silence stretched long enough for lightning to illuminate every corner of the cabin. Then Samuel's weathered face appeared as she opened the door. His eyes took in Dakota, the blood, the urgency written in every line of her posture. "Lord, have mercy," he whispered. "That's the idea," Mercy said. Samuel stepped inside without another word. He had seen enough frontier justice to know the difference between law and lynching. His Bible appeared from his coat pocket, pages worn soft from decades of weddings and funerals. "Join hands," he said simply. Dakota's hand engulfed hers. His palm bore calluses from reins and weapons, but his grip remained gentle. She felt the tremor in his fingers, whether from blood loss or the weight of what they were doing. Samuel's voice filled the cabin with words older than the territory itself. Love, honor, cherish. in sickness and health, till death parts you. The vows felt strange on Mercy's tongue after speaking them once before in a different life. Dakota repeated the words with quiet dignity. His English carried the precise grammar of someone who had learned it from books rather than conversation. When he promised to love and protect her, she heard truth again. Samuel closed his Bible as the first pale edge of dawn touched the eastern sky. By the power vested in me by the territory of Texas, I pronounce you husband and wife. Hoofbeats drummed across the hardpan outside. Stone's patrol had arrived. Dakota moved toward the back door, but Mercy caught his arm. "You're my husband now. Stand beside me." The baby slept peacefully in her arms as Stone's fist hammered against her door. She opened it to face her brother-in-law's fury, Dakota solid and silent at her shoulder. Colonel Stone's eyes went from her face to Dakota's and back again. Behind him, Lieutenant Jack Stone's hand moved toward his sidearm. 6 more soldiers spread across her porch like hunting dogs. "Step aside, Mercy," Stone commanded. "We're here for the savage." "You're here for my husband," she replied evenly. Stone's face darkened to the color of old leather. "Don't play games with me, woman." Samuel Wright cleared his throat from behind them. "Married them myself." "Not 10 minutes past, Colonel." "All legal and proper." The silence stretched taut as a bowstring. Stone's jaw worked without sound. Jack's hand tightened on his weapon grip. Finally, Stone stepped back. "This isn't finished, Mercy." "Yes, it is," she said. The patrol wheeled their horses and rode toward the rising sun. Mercy watched until they disappeared into the heat shimmer before closing the door. Dakota sank into a chair, the adrenaline leaving him hollow. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Mercy said. "We both know this was just the beginning." He nodded. Slowly. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the air clean and sharp. 2 babies breathed peacefully in the quiet that followed lightning. Samuel Wright gathered his Bible and coat. "I'll be going now," the old minister said. "But I'll be keeping you folks in my prayers." After he left, Mercy and Dakota sat in the lamplight, strangers bound by desperate necessity and the thin protection of territorial law. Dawn painted the windows gold, and with it came the weight of what they had chosen. 3 weeks of careful pretense had worn grooves in their daily routine, deeper than wagon ruts in dry earth. Dakota slept in the barn among the hay and mice, emerging each dawn to mend what Thomas Caldwell's death had left broken. Fence posts that leaned drunk against the wind. A roof that shed shingles like autumn leaves. Cattle that bore the hollow look of animals slowly starving on overgrazed land. Mercy watched him work from her kitchen window while the babies napped. His hands moved with quiet precision, coaxing life from tools her late husband had never quite mastered. The sick heifer that had refused feed for a week now followed Dakota across the pasture, drawn by some knowledge that lived in his fingertips. The townspeople noticed. Their eyes tracked every movement when she brought the children to the general store. Whispers followed her down Main Street like dust kicked up by carriage wheels. Sheriff Clayton Brooks cornered her outside the post office on a Tuesday that hung thick with unspoken threats. His badge caught the harsh light, throwing sharp reflections across his weathered face. "Turn him in, Mercy." She shifted Little Moon higher on her hip. The child had grown strong on her milk, his dark eyes bright with health. "Turn in my husband? That marriage is a mockery before God and decent folk." Samuel Wright seemed to think God approved. Brooks stepped closer. His breath carried the sour tang of whiskey taken too early in the day. "Stone's patience won't last forever. Neither will mine." Mercy met his stare without blinking. "Then I suppose we'll all have to live with disappointment." She walked away before he could respond, but his words followed her home. They settled into the corners of the cabin like smoke, tainting everything they touched. That evening, Dakota found her on the porch steps, watching the sun bleed out across the western sky. He sat beside her without speaking, close enough that she could smell the honest sweat of his labor mixed with something else. Something that reminded her of sage and distant storms. "They want you gone," she said finally. "I know." Brooks threatened. "You is today." Dakota's hand stilled on the rope he had been mending. "What did he say?" "That Stone's patience is wearing thin." The rope slid through his fingers, forgotten. In the fading light, his profile looked carved from the same stone that broke plows and buried dreams across this unforgiving land. "I could leave," he said quietly. "With little Moon barely weaned? Better he grow up an orphan than die with his father." Mercy turned to face him fully. The words rose from somewhere deeper than thought, pulled up from the place where desperate truths lived. "You're not his only father now." Something shifted in Dakota's expression. A crack in the careful wall he kept between them. She had been nursing both children for weeks, rising in the dark hours when hunger called. Little Moon reached for her with the same trust her own son showed. Both babies bore the marks of her care, thriving under a tension that asked nothing about blood or birth. "This marriage," Dakota said carefully, "it was protection. Nothing more was promised. No, nothing more." But her voice carried a weight that had nothing to do with legal documents. They sat in silence as the first stars appeared, sharp and cold in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its mate. The next morning brought visitors. Hoofbeats drummed across the hard pan before sunrise, and Mercy woke to voices outside her window. Dakota's voice, low and urgent. Another man speaking in rapid Comanche. She dressed quickly and stepped onto the porch. Dakota stood beside his horse, deep in conversation with a warrior whose face could have been carved from granite. War paint streaked both men's features, and the newcomer's hand rested easy on his weapon. "My brother," Dakota said when he saw her. "Hawk flying." The warrior's eyes found hers, measuring. When he spoke, his English came halting but clear. "You are the white woman who claims my brother. I'm the woman who married him." Hawk Flying's gaze shifted to the babies, who had woken and begun fussing in her arms. His expression softened fractionally when he saw Little Moon. "The child lives, he thrives. Because of you," Mercy nodded. There seemed nothing else to say. Hawk Flying turned back to his brother, switching to Comanche. The conversation grew heated, though both men kept their voices low. Mercy caught fragments. War. Revenge. Home. Finally, Dakota shook his head with finality. Hawk Flying stared at him for a long moment, then swung onto his horse. "You choose the white world," he said in English. "I choose my son's future." Hawk Flying's horse wheeled and galloped toward the horizon, leaving dust and unspoken accusations in his wake. Dakota stood watching until the rider disappeared into the heat shimmer. "He wants you to come home," Mercy said. "This is home now." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Home meant more than shelter. It meant belonging. It meant choosing sides in a war that painted everything in blood. That afternoon, as Dakota worked to repair the windmill that had refused to turn since spring, Mercy brought him water and stayed to watch. His movements held a fluid grace that spoke of long practice with tools and tasks. When he noticed her watching, something passed between them that had nothing to do with marriage, contracts, or legal protection. "Where did you learn English?" she asked. "Mission school." "White missionaries thought they could save our souls by killing our language. Did they succeed?" Dakota's hand stilled on the windmill blade. "They taught me to read their books. To write their words. To think their God might have room for a Comanche boy. And does he?" Their God and mine seemed to want different things. Mercy stepped closer, drawn by something in his voice. "What does your God want?" "For children to grow up safe, for people to judge hearts instead of skin, for the land to feed everyone who tends it with respect." Those don't sound so different from what mine wants. Dakota looked at her then, really looked. The careful distance he maintained cracked just enough to let something genuine show through. Your people and mine have been killing each other. For decades. We're not our people, we're just us. The windmill blade caught the afternoon breeze and began to turn. Water flowed from the pump for the first time in months, clear and cold from the deep aquifer. Both of them watched it pour into the wooden trough, and Mercy felt something similar happening inside her chest. Some long dry place beginning to fill again. That evening brought new trouble. A rider appeared at sunset, lean and dangerous as a hunting wolf. He wore the clothes of a drifter, but carried himself with the confidence of a man accustomed to violence. "Name's Silas Creed," he announced from horseback. "I'm looking for the Comanche goes by Iron Wolf." Mercy stepped onto the porch with both babies in her arms. Dakota emerged from the barn, his hand resting near the knife at his belt. "What's your business with my husband?" Creed's smile held no warmth. "Your husband killed my partner 3 months back. I'm here to collect the bounty." "What bounty?" $500 for Iron Wolf, dead or alive. Seems the territorial governor takes a dim view of murdering white folk. Dakota stepped forward, placing himself between Creed and the porch. "I killed no one's partner. Tell that to the judge." "There won't be a judge," Mercy said flatly. "There'll just be a rope," Creed shrugged. "Justice comes in many forms." "Ma'am." He rode away as the sun died behind the mountains, but his presence lingered in the air. Poison in the water. Rot in the foundation. That night, Dakota sat on the porch cleaning his rifle while Mercy rocked the babies to sleep inside. When she joined him, the weapon lay across his knees, oil black in the starlight. "How many are there?" she asked. "How many what?" "Men who think you killed their partners, their brothers, their friends." Dakota was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of years. "2. Many to count. Every raid blamed on my people falls on my head. Every missing person becomes my fault. Every fear they carry about us gets shaped into a warrant with my name, but you're innocent. Innocence is a luxury they won't let me afford." Mercy reached out without thinking, her hand covering his on the rifle stock. His skin felt warm against the metal's cold. He didn't pull away. "Then we'll prove it," she said. "How?" "By finding out who really killed those people. By showing them the truth." Dakota turned his hand palm up, catching her fingers. The gesture felt more intimate than any kiss could have. "Truth won't matter if I'm already dead. Then we won't let you die." The words rose from some place deeper than logic. A place where a woman who had buried one husband discovered she wasn't ready to bury another. Where protection had grown into something else entirely, slow and steady as grass pushing through stone. They sat holding hands in the darkness while the babies slept and danger circled their small sanctuary. The land stretched away on all sides, vast and unforgiving. But for this moment, their world contracted to the space between two people who had chosen each other against impossible odds. Tomorrow would bring new threats, new accusations, new reasons why their marriage was a lie and their love an impossibility. Tonight, under stars that belonged to no nation and served no flag, they had each other. The pattern emerged slowly, traced in blood and ash across the territorial map that Dakota spread on Mercy's kitchen table. Each red mark represented a raid, a family destroyed, a homestead abandoned. The attacks followed the planned railroad route with the precision of surveyor's marks. "Look," Mercy said, her finger tracing the line. "Every one of these properties got bought up within a month." Dakota nodded grimly. "The buyers were always the same. Shell companies with names that meant nothing, all connected to one man. Cornelius Finch, the territorial land speculator who dressed in fine suits and spoke of progress. He's driving people off their land," Dakota said. "Using your people as the boogeyman, while the real killers wear badges. The truth settled between them heavy as winter snow. Sheriff Brooks had been conveniently absent during every raid. His deputies always arrived just late enough to find bodies and blame. The territorial authorities accepted their reports without question. Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain that wouldn't come. The land cracked with thirst while storm clouds gathered and dispersed without delivering mercy. Mercy watched the sky through her window and felt the same parched hope. Colonel Stone's restrictions had begun to bite. The general store refused her credit. The bank questioned her loan payments. Even the preacher's wife crossed the street to avoid speaking to her. They were being squeezed from every direction, pushed toward the breaking point. Dakota had taken to sleeping in the house now, on the floor beside the baby's cradle. Not from any change in their arrangement, but because danger pressed closer each night. Riders had been seen near the property line. Cattle had gone missing. Someone was testing their defenses. "We need proof," Mercy said. "We need witnesses." "The dead don't testify." Dakota's jaw tightened. "Then we find someone who survived." The search took them to the ruins of the Morrison homestead, where a family of 5 had died 3 weeks prior. The official report blamed Comanche raiders, but Dakota read the signs differently. The tracks showed shod horses, not Indian ponies. The bodies had been arranged to suggest scalping, but the cuts were wrong, clumsy, made by someone who had never seen the real thing. "White men did this," Dakota said quietly. "Can you prove it?" He knelt beside the burned cabin, studying the ground. "The tracks lead back toward town. Whoever did this went home to sleep in their beds." Mercy felt something cold settle in her stomach. These weren't random killings. They were executions carried out by men who knew their victims wouldn't be missed until it was too late. That evening brought unexpected visitors. Hawk Flying appeared at their door with 2 other warriors, their faces painted for war. But they came seeking information, not blood. "The white settlements blame us," Hawk Flying said. "But we did not kill these people." "We know," Dakota replied. "Then who?" "Men who profit from your people's guilt." Hawk Flying's eyes narrowed. "You have proof?" "We're gathering it." The war party stayed through the night, hidden in the barn while Mercy and Dakota continued their investigation. By lamplight, they traced the connections between Finch's land purchases and the mysterious raids. The pattern was clear to anyone willing to see it. But seeing and proving were different things entirely. The next morning brought Sheriff Brooks to their door. He rode up with 2 deputies, their weapons loose in their holsters. The threat hung in the air, thick as smoke. "Morning, Mercy," Brooks said from his saddle. "I hear you've been asking questions around town." "Free country," she replied. "For some folks. Others might find themselves in trouble for poking their noses where they don't belong." Dakota stepped onto the porch beside her. The deputies' hands moved toward their guns, but Brooks held up a restraining hand. "Wouldn't want anything unfortunate to happen," Brooks continued. "These are dangerous times. Lot of accidents befalling folks who forget their place. Is that a threat, Sheriff?" Brooks smiled without warmth, just friendly advice. "Sometimes. The best way to stay healthy is to mind your own business." After they rode away, Mercy felt the walls closing in. They were running out of time and options. The evidence pointed to corruption at every level, but who would believe them? Who would act on their accusations? "There's something else," Dakota said that evening. They sat at the kitchen table while the baby slept. Outside, coyotes called to each other across the endless dark. "What?" "The night my wife's family died. I saw Sheriff Brooks there. Mercy's blood went cold. You saw him?" "Riding away from their house. I thought he was investigating. But he was there before anyone reported the killings." "Why didn't you?" "Tell me?" "Because I knew no one would believe a Comanche's word against a white lawman." The admission hung between them. Here was the truth they needed, but it came wrapped in the very prejudice that made it useless. Dakota's testimony would be dismissed before the first word left his mouth. "Then we need another way," Mercy said. "What way?" "We make them show themselves." The plan took shape slowly, born of desperation and fed by rage. If Finch and Brooks were orchestrating the raids, then they would expect another soon. The railroad survey team was due to map the eastern sections next month. Those homesteads would need to be cleared. "We could warn the families," Mercy suggested. "And say what? That their sheriff is planning to murder them? Then we catch them in the act." Dakota shook his head. "Too dangerous. If we're wrong, people die. If we're right and do nothing, people die anyway." They stared at each other across the table. The decision balanced on a knife's edge. Act and risk everything. Stay silent. And watch innocents perish. The next day brought the answer they dreaded. News came that the Patterson family had been found dead, their homestead burned. The official report blamed Comanche raiders again. But the Pattersons' land sat directly in the path of the proposed railroad spur. "How many more?" Mercy asked. "Until someone stops them." That night, Sheriff Brooks returned with a larger force. 6 deputies this time, all armed and ready. They surrounded the house at sunset, torches flickering in the gathering dusk. "Come out, Mercy," Brooks called. "Time to end this charade." She stepped onto the porch with both babies in her arms. Dakota appeared beside her, his rifle ready but not raised. The deputies spread out in a half circle, cutting off escape routes. "You've been asking too many questions," Brooks said. "Stirring up trouble where none existed." "Trouble existed long before I started asking questions." "Did it, or did trouble ride onto your property 3 weeks ago and put ideas in your head?" Brooks dismounted, his boots heavy on the packed earth. "Here's what's going to happen. Your husband is going to resist arrest. My deputies are going to defend themselves. And you're going to be a widow again. On what charges? Murder, theft, inciting rebellion. Take your pick." Mercy felt the world narrow to this moment. Everything they had built, everything they had discovered, balanced on the edge of violence. The baby stirred in her arms, sensing the tension. "Unless," Brooks continued, "you're willing to be reasonable." "Meaning?" "Sign over the property. Take the children and leave the territory. Start fresh somewhere else." "And if I refuse?" Brooks smiled. "Then we'll have ourselves a tragic accident. Shame when good people get caught up in Indian troubles." The torches cast dancing shadows across the yard. Mercy could see the calculation in the deputies' eyes. They had done this before. They would do it again. "You killed the Pattersons," she said. "Can't prove that. We can prove the connection to Finch. Can you?" Brooks pulled out a folded document. "Funny thing about evidence, sometimes it just disappears." The paper caught fire in his torch. Mercy watched their carefully gathered proof turn to ash and smoke. Weeks of investigation reduced to nothing in seconds. "So what's it going to be, Mercy? The easy way or the hard way?" She looked at Dakota, seeing her own determination reflected in his eyes. They had come too far to surrender now. Too many people had died for other men's greed. "I choose the hard way," she said. Brooks nodded slowly. "I was hoping you'd say that." The deputies raised their weapons as the last light faded from the western sky. Mercy held her children close and prepared to make their final stand. The war cry split the night air before Brooks could give the order to fire. Hawk Flying and his warriors burst from the barn, weapons raised but not to kill. They had come to witness, not to wage war. "Hold your fire," a new voice commanded from the darkness. Colonel Stone rode into the torchlight with a full patrol, his uniform crisp despite the late hour. His eyes swept the scene, taking in the surrounded house, the armed deputies, the babies in Mercy's arms. "Stand down, Sheriff," Stone ordered. Brooks turned, confusion replacing confidence. "Colonel, we're making an arrest." "On whose authority?" Territorial warrant for the Comanche. Stone's horse stepped closer. Let me see it. Brooks fumbled for papers that didn't exist. The silence stretched until even the coyotes stopped calling. Stone's expression hardened as understanding dawned. There is no warrant, Stone said quietly. There will be. No, there won't. Old Samuel Wright emerged from behind Stone's patrol, his weathered face grim in the firelight. In his hands he carried a leather satchel thick with documents. Samuel, Mercy breathed. Been busy these past weeks, the old minister said. Seems our sheriff's been keeping interesting company. He pulled out photographs, correspondence, bank records, evidence of the conspiracy that Mercy and Dakota had risked everything to gather. But Samuel had connections they lacked. Friends in territorial government who asked fewer questions. Cornelius Finch sends his regards, Samuel said to Brooks. Or he would, if he wasn't currently in federal custody. Brooks's face went white. You can't prove anything, can't I? Samuel spread the documents on the ground. Your signatures on every forged report. Your handwritings on every false witness statement. Your bank account shows deposits that match every property sale. The deputies looked at each other nervously. They had signed on for easy money, not federal charges. Their weapons lowered. Fractionally. You killed innocent families, Stone said to Brooks. Proved nothing. Didn't have to. Samuel pulled out a final document. Telegraph from the territorial governor arrived this morning. Federal marshals are on their way. Brooks looked around the circle of faces, seeing his future written in their expressions. No escape, no allies, no mercy for the merciless. This is all his doing, Brooks pointed at Dakota. The savage corrupted her mind. The only corruption. Here is yours, Stone replied. Silas Creed chose that moment to make his play. The bounty hunter had been watching from the shadows, waiting for his chance. His gun cleared leather as he stepped into the light. $500 says different. The shot echoed across the plains. But it was Stone who fired, his service revolver smoking in the torchlight. Creed dropped his weapon and clutched his shoulder, cursing. Funny thing about bounty hunters, Stone said calmly. They forget that attempted murder carries its own price. Dakota moved then, crossing the yard in 3 quick strides. His hand closed on Creed's wounded arm, applying pressure that made the man scream. My wife asked you a question, Dakota said quietly. Who paid you to kill me? Finch, Creed gasped. Finch and Brooks. They wanted you dead before you could talk. About what? The families. You saw too much, knew too much. Stone's deputies moved in, surrounding Brooks and his men. The corrupt sheriff found himself outnumbered and outgunned, his conspiracy crumbling around him. You're all making a mistake, Brooks said desperately. The only mistake was trusting. You, Stone replied. As the arrests began, Mercy felt something inside her chest finally uncoil. The weight she had carried since that first desperate night began to lift. The baby stirred in her arms, sensing the change. Dakota appeared at her side, his hand finding hers. The touch felt different now. Not desperate or careful, but certain. Founded on something deeper than legal protection. It's over, he said softly. No, it's just beginning. The trials took 3 months. Brooks and his deputies received federal sentences for conspiracy and murder. Creed testified against his employers in exchange for a lighter sentence. Finch's entire operation unraveled under federal investigation. The territorial governor issued a formal apology to the Comanche Nation for the false accusations. Several peaceful bands received safe passage to better reservation lands. The railroad company paid reparations to the families of those killed in the land grab scheme. But for Mercy and Dakota, the real victory was quieter, more personal. They had built something together in the crucible of danger. Trust forged in desperation had grown into something stronger. The marriage that began as protection had become a partnership built on mutual respect and shared purpose. The ranch prospered under their joint management. Dakota's knowledge of the land combined with Mercy's business sense to create something neither could have achieved alone. Cattle thrived on grass that had been overgrazed under previous ownership. The windmill turned steadily, drawing life from the deep aquifer. Other mixed families began to settle nearby. Word spread of a place where different peoples could coexist without fear. The community grew slowly but steadily, anchored by the quiet example of two people who had chosen love over hatred. Colonel Stone became an unlikely ally. His encounter with true corruption had changed his perspective on justice and prejudice. He advocated for peaceful coexistence between settlers and tribes, using his influence to prevent future conflicts. Hawk Flying visited occasionally, bringing news from the reservations. His initial skepticism had given way to grudging respect. Dakota had found a different kind of strength in the white world, one that didn't require abandoning his principles. The babies grew into children who knew no distinction between their parents' backgrounds. They played in dirt that belonged to both cultures, spoke words from two languages, and learned that family was defined by love rather than blood. On quiet evenings, Mercy and Dakota would sit on their porch watching the sun set over land that had tested them both. The peace between them was hard-won, built on honesty and maintained through daily choices to trust each other. "Do you ever regret it?" Mercy asked one evening. "Regret what?" "Giving up your old life." Dakota considered the question while their children played in the yard. His son had grown strong and confident, secure in the knowledge that he was wanted and protected. Mercy's boy treated Little Moon as a true brother, with no awareness that others might see differences. "A man's life isn't what he gives up," Dakota said finally. "It's what he builds." And what have we built? Something new. Something that belongs to both worlds and neither. Something worth protecting. Something worth everything. The stars emerged one by one as darkness settled over the Texas plains. In the distance, a train whistle echoed across the landscape, carrying progress and change. But here, in this small corner of an unforgiving land, two people had proven that love could transcend the boundaries that others insisted were absolute. Their story had begun with a desperate gamble in the face of certain death. It had grown into something neither had dared hope for. A true partnership, a real family, a future built on the radical notion that hearts mattered more than heritage. The wind carried the scent of rain that would finally come with the morning. The long drought was ending, and the land would bloom again. Green shoots would push through the cracked earth, reaching toward the sun with stubborn determination. Just as love had found a way to grow in the most unlikely soil, and that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you, it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.